Bonjour tout le monde, je m'appelle Thomas Walsh, je ne parle pas bien français. S'il vous plaît, je parle anglais. Merci beaucoup. Well, good morning, everyone. It's wonderful to be here in Montreal, in Quebec, in Canada. And I've had a good occasion to come here many times, and often can meet friends and acquaintances that I've missed over the intervening times. Some of us were in Korea earlier this month, where UPF, Universal Peace Federation, had a major program, and we've just returned, maybe even a little bit jet lagged still. I'm currently serving not only as a senior advisor to the Universal Peace Federation, where I served for many years as its chair. I'm now heading up a graduate school. It's called the HG International Graduate School for Peace and Public Leadership. It's based in New York City. It offers graduate programs in religious studies and the field known as peace studies, which does a very systematic examination from a scholarly academic level of how we can try to promote peace in our world and raise up individuals, men and women with kind of increased capacities to work in areas of diplomacy and peace building in general, including inter-religious peace building, which I'll talk a little bit about with this short presentation. So I prepared a PowerPoint to talk about our topic for this program on faith and spirituality at the center of social peace. This is fundamental to the work of UPF. You read about its principles, talk about God, it talks about the role of the family, the importance of having a moral and spiritual foundation to our outlook on life, and the importance of dialogue, that we learn to know about one another and through dialogue together, develop better understanding, mutual respect, and on that foundation, build a base for more harmony and cooperation as a goal. First of all, I thought just to say, what is religion? We take that term for granted, but it's a category, a way of describing a phenomenon that happens all over the world. And when scholars began to study different cultures around the world, they could find differences but certain similarities as they would come to explore South Asia and learn about Hinduism and Buddhism and Sikhism and Jainism, and could draw parallels with Judaism, Christianity, Islam, and say there's something similar here. And so I just thought to identify, remind us of some of those. One is, religions often begin with some basic story, some kind of creation myth or story, fundamental story that we can find in the book of Genesis, in the Gospels, in the Bhagavad Gita, in the Quran, that give us some general understanding in more of a narrative of life, how life started, what our purpose is, and where's our destiny, where are we headed. And then this often gets put into certain doctrines, or that's of a more rational nature. We see in religions liturgies and rituals that are performed, ethics, scriptures. So these are certain commonalities, and I use this term like heroes. There's a famous book written by a scholar of religion called Joseph Campbell. Some of you may have heard of him, but it's called Hero with 1,000 Faces. And he looked at all the cultures and religions around the world and saw a certain structure of the life of these great heroes of different cultures and religions. And there were similarities in the structure of those stories. But also religion forms community. It has been the basis of bringing, we share this story. We look back to our common origin according to our founding myth. And I don't use that word myth as meaning something not real or not true, something magical. But myth is like this deepest core understanding of who we are. So that's something about religion, and then we see it manifested in this second level of categories we call a religion, Christianity, Judaism, Islam, Hinduism, Buddhism. And then we can also look that when we do the demographics, not only are people Indians or Americans or Canadians or Europeans, but also we can do data and demographics of religion. And we see it's not a small thing. There are a lot of Christians. You know, we just had a new pope, right? Pope Leo XIV. I talked to Father Fernandez about that. And people are interested in that because religion is still significant. Pope Francis was beloved by many, of course not by all, but he also worked to build relationship with Islam, and together with the Sheikh of Al-Azhar, which is the kind of central teaching institution of Islam, or perhaps the most highly respected in Cairo, in Egypt. And they formed a good relationship. I had the chance to meet Pope Francis on 3 occasions, and the most recent was in 2019, and when I was with him, he wanted to give me this book called On Human Fraternity, and he was so excited about it because it was a book that kind of, he worked together with this Muslim high imam, the Sheikh of Al-Azhar University, and it was a major breakthrough in building fraternity. So my second point is that religion is extremely important just by the numbers alone. If we look at our world of 8 billion people, let's say 7 billion are kind of believers that generally can fit into one of these categories. And I'll get to why that's significant. The third point is that religion has social significance, meaning it impacts society because it shapes our identity, and we are the units of being that make up society. So our identity, not exclusively or totally, is shaped by religion, but for most of us, it's a very formative and basic life-shaping, character-shaping, concept-shaping aspect of our identity. So, and then we act in society in the world. So it is impacting the social world around us. This was certainly an insight of the sociologists of religion, like Max Weber or Emil Durkheim. These were famous early sociologists who studied religion. Max Weber had studied Karl Marx and saw that Marx saw religion as simply a superstructure that emerged out of the material conditions of life. In a sense, it had no essence or power of its own, but it emerged as a way to cope with the capitalist system. So the proletariat, sorry to get a little complicated, but you know, embraced religion as a way to cope with their miserable reality. And if you eliminated that reality, the misery of the poor, religion would wither away. Max Weber came and said, no, religion is an agent. It's a forceful agent of society and change in the world. So he said that much of what emerged as modernity, what we call modernity from the 15th, 16th century on, the rise of science, and etc., was ultimately triggered by religious developments, and it impacted the economic world. So he studied all the world's religions to look at the relationship between religion and economic practices, and saw that there were religions that were simply otherworldly, thinking only about the afterlife or my ultimate salvation, and this world is not so important. But religions are this worldly, not only the afterlife world, but impact this world in powerful ways. How? They very much impact the institutions of the family, the core kind of sexual ethics and morality of the religions. They affect fertility rates. You know, one of the issues that many nations are dealing with now is depopulation. Depopulation. That means rapid decline of birth rates, fertility rates. We were just in Korea. Korea's birth rate is 0.7%. The replacement fertility rate is 2.1%. So that means quite a few highly developed nations are now having decreasing populations. This has massive impact, including China, Russia, increasingly the United States. It has huge impact. I work in higher education. If your pool of fertility is declining, you've got all these universities to accommodate this population, but that population shrinks. Schools are going to close. They have to close down. The funds that come in through, anyway, there's a correlation between religion and fertility that's quite important. It's like an ecosystem, and when you pull it out, and more highly religious correlate, even if you're anti-population growth, it's an empirical thing. Let's forget about the politics of it or our view of the future and the best type of world to have. There's a correlation between religion and fertility rates. Literacy, the Protestant Reformation and the printing press created a huge spike in literacy. This contributed to modernization, rise of science, so many things. So these often underappreciated, taken for granted factors that impacted history also have correlations with religious factors. Education. Often, in order to read the scripture, you need literacy, and also it leads to the capacity to be better educated. And religion impacts the economic, the political, ultimately the cultural, and the ethos. So we're talking about creating social peace. The other thing I didn't mention is the term social capital. That social capital is we know financial capital. Social capital is what kind of helps us build institutions in society and work together. Everything from educational institutions to non-governmental organizations, civil society, etc. So religion plays a key role there as well. We're living in a fascinating time. A lot of the outgrowth of the Enlightenment, the scientific revolution, and that predicted the withering away of religion, that it would die out over time because it was a more primitive stage of human intellectual development, the development of human consciousness. And as we matured, it would fade away. This was the secularization thesis, and it seemed to be applicable, particularly in certain parts of the world. In Europe in particular, it seemed to be the case. Industrialization, modernization led to secularization. But they began to see differing trends, and this became most apparent at the time when the Soviet Union and the Cold War that we knew kind of came to a close. Because what started to emerge was a resurgence of religion. This impacted international relations. This impacted the way scholars looked at geopolitical relations, because they saw that the political sphere and the effort to create a balance of power or realism about geopolitical realities could not be understood without understanding culture and religion that underlies. You look at India and Pakistan almost going into a nuclear threat recently. There are issues that are related to the difference between Islam. Yes, it's about Kashmir, but there's also something about the division of India and Pakistan, going back to the time of Gandhi and that had some aspect related to the differing cultures that were rooted in different religions. What's going on in Gaza, of course, that's not strictly a religious war, by no means. But religion is one of the factors that goes into human identity and to social, political, economic identity. It can't be pulled out and put over there. We're kind of this enmeshed group of aspects of our identity. We are religious actors, moral actors, political actors, economic actors in one body. So more and more, the understanding of the role of religion has emerged, and many talk about the post-secular age. I read an article, sorry to pick on you, Father Fernandez, that in Europe, which is has been traditionally a highly secular, there's a very strong growth trajectory in the Catholic Church. So even these resurgences are happening. There was a famous book by Samuel Huntington in 1993, right after the end of the Soviet Union. Two things happened. One was people observed the former Yugoslavia and the Balkans. And Yugoslavia broke up into different kind of ethno-religious political entities. The Bosnians, the Serbians, and the Croatians, Slovenians, Montenegrins, etc., often along religious, ethnic lines. It meant that people still cherished our belongingness based on our religious, cultural roots and identity, and even a desire. We want a land for our people. Anyway, it meant that religion was still something very much linked to human solidarity. The other was a book by a political scientist named Samuel Huntington, who came out with a book in 1993 called The Clash of Civilizations. And his thesis was ultimately that we have been living through an age of ideological, the communist ideology and the liberal democratic free market capitalist ideology, a kind of a political economic ideology. Religion, inconsequential. You know, it's kind of a private sphere. It's not really relevant to big power politics. Huntington's contribution was to say we are going to see the rise, move away from the political economic ideology era to the era of civilizational emphasis. So when you look at, for example, even within China, China will not try to articulate universal values. China will say, we don't buy into the model of the liberal democratic West claiming to represent universal values. We think that's bogus. There are our Chinese values. But Vladimir Putin is all going to say, we are advocating Russian values. We are a unique civilization. So it creates a very new dynamic where, what's the point? Religion is a significant factor in the dynamics of world affairs. It's also we're at a time where we're observing a shift from globalization to more nationalism. And this is not just a Donald Trump phenomenon. This is happening widely in many parts of the world. Many books coming out on the decline of the West, the decline of democracy, right? People are concerned about that. Where are we headed? And so these are factors of also postmodernism is a worldview that says anyone who's trying to tell you they're universals is on a power trip to dominate you. I mean, that's probably unfair, but it's something like that. That the claim of universality is a Western and post-Enlightenment approach that has done more harm than good in a way. So you're getting more pluralization. This leads to the sense of national identity too, in an unintended consequence way. So we're in very interesting times and challenging times, to say the least. These are some of just the books I mentioned. Samuel Huntington. There's a famous book by Douglas Johnston called The Missing Dimension of Religion, The Missing Dimension of Statecraft, that we've missed religion. Jimmy Carter wrote the preface to this book. We missed how religion is a factor in global affairs. And this was a big change. Madeleine Albright wrote a book, The Mighty and the Almighty. Also, she was the Secretary of State from the United States. Jeffrey Haynes, An Introduction to International Relations and Religions. These kinds of books began to proliferate. Religious soft diplomacy, how religion is also involved in peace mediation. So, is religion a source of conflict or a source of peace? Is the human being a source of conflict or a source of peace? In some ways they're similar questions. And the answer is it can go either way. Is AI going to be for the good, or is it going to be something tragic and destructive and evil? We don't know the answer 100%. We're concerned because we know the history of humanity since Adam and Eve or whatever, that it's not been all good. So, a lot of looking at the world. I don't have time to go through this. My time is running out, but you know, we can kind of go through the world, and I don't think it's correct to say religion is the source of conflict. Once again, if we develop this theory of the human being and of human society, where it's a mix of religion, culture, politics, economics, and ethics, they're not discretely compartmentalized like in a university. Oh, you came to the sociology department. No, you need to go over to physics. We're not built that way. You know, we're enmeshed in a complex aspect of these many parts of ourselves and societies and the world. And religion can function, should function, and we try to make it function in a very positive way. How? To conclude, ecumenical activity is extremely important. Within Christianity, there were many, many disputes. There were religious wars. To some extent, the emergence of the modern state in the 16th century, the Peace of Westphalia, was an outgrowth of wars that were somehow rooted in part in religion. So, ecumenical dialogue, intra-religious dialogue. In Islam, there are tensions between Sunni and Shia and some other sects of Islam. All religions have internal challenges and disputes that can be worked on. And then there is this wider ecumenism, or there's the interreligious dialogue that's needed. That religion can be a force for the soft power approach to peace. Governments have the instruments of military power, powers of coercion, and economic sanctions, another type of coercion. Governments can also do the soft power approach. and many do, trying to use diplomacy and build goodwill and that. But also the world of non-governmental organizations, faith-based organizations, can be leaders in that sector. I do a lot of work over the years at the UN. There are many, many non-governmental organizations, many of them faith-based organizations, very active, working at the UN, working with member states, seeking to encourage in directions that are moving toward peace. So I applaud you for being here today. I applaud the work of UPF here in Canada and its interest in peace. We're in a very challenging time. And the world is on the precipice of great opportunity, but also of potential disaster. Any number of wars and conflicts going on now could explode. And I mentioned AI. I'd love to talk with you about that, but that's another area, because that's also not just in the area of general information and ChatGPT and these and robotics, but it's also at the forefront of military development. And countries are worried about what another country is doing with AI, so they're going to do the same. So it leads to, as it always does, to military uses. So a lot of challenges, I think very important for faith-based organizations, religions to be active, to be well educated, to develop literacy in terms of religion, and help other people become more literate, not only about their own religion, but about other religions, engaging the other respectfully, seeking to dialogue. Dialogue doesn't mean just talk, but it means listen, 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 and understand, develop mutual respect. And also kind of checking our theologies of religion, meaning how do I, as a Christian or a Muslim, how do I think theologically about the member of another religion? Do I have a theology? And that theology can think, oh, they are heretics, or my theology is they are doomed to damnation, they cannot be saved. Or do I have a theology that says they are also from the same God, and I love them, and I want to work with them, understand them, respect them. These are very important aspects for peace. Religion can be at the center of peace. I pray for this Leo the 14th, and pray for faith leaders around the world, because they can surely make a difference and make our world a world of lasting peace, and make social peace in our societies as well. Thank you for your patience.